All right, so what I'd like you to do, please, for this lesson is to download matrixoperations.java from our introduction to matrices in our classroom. And I've just made a blank project called Matrix Practice in BlueJ, and I'm going to add a class from a file, and I just downloaded it to my desktop. So Matrix Operations, okay? And your task is going to be to complete each one of these methods here that I have described. Okay, they're all going to be static, so we'll be able to call them directly, and we'll write a tester method together for that. But before we can do that, these are going to involve matrices. So we need to go over a few concepts about what exactly is a matrix and how we use them in computer science. So first of all, let's get some of this understanding down about what exactly a matrix is. From math class, you would know that a matrix is a rectangular arrangement of numbers. Something like this. This would be a square 3 by 3 matrix, where this is the rows here, and this is the columns here. But in computer science, matrices can be used for all sorts of things, including pixels on a screen or all sorts of different data. So they don't have to be numbers. They can be any object you want. They can be objects or primitives. We could use matrices of trues and false for Booleans. Floating point numbers, like the real numbers from double, or instances of classes. So how do we make a matrix? Well, we use an array. But each element in the array is actually another array. And what you need to remember is that an array is an object type. So when I make a matrix, and I'll call it mat, I'm really making a reference to an array somewhere in the Java memory. Then stored in each value in the array is a reference to somewhere in the memory where there's another array. So if I was going to make this matrix here in Java, what I would really have is an array where each element in the array points to another array, and they could be anywhere in the memory. So we picture them all lined up and made pretty like this, but that's not how it really is. And maybe this one might be over here. Okay? All right, with that understood, let's get to the functionality of the programming of this matrix. So when we make a matrix in Java, and I'm going to just be making some matrices here in a tester method. Let me just run down to the bottom of this real quick. There. Okay, close. And then I'll enlarge this font here. Okay. So I'm going to say public. Oops, I thought I was going to say something like that. Public static void test. Oh, I'm missing parentheses on my method. And so we could run this method to test our different calls to these other methods. Notice they were supposed to be static. It looks like I'm missing a couple static modifiers. We'll need to add those. And I'll re-upload this with the static added. And that just means we don't have to instantiate the class. All right, I think we got all of them now. All right, so let's see. How would I make a matrix? Well, first I have to tell Java what I'm going to be holding in my matrix. Let's say I would like to make a matrix of integer values. Well, we're going to be making an array of arrays. So first I have to tell Java, hey, I want an array of integers. And I want that to be an array. So we actually put 2 of these array symbols. And the first number is going to be the number of rows in your matrix, and the next number is going to be the number of columns. course, that mainly works out that way just on how you print them, okay? But now we can store our values in our matrix individually. The upper left-hand corner was at 0, 0, and I can store that to something like a 5. Then 0, 1. So I'm still in row 0, but now I'm in column 1, and I'll make that be a 3. Still row 0, now in column 3. And now column 4. Since we declared that this matrix will have 4 rows and 5 columns, I cannot go beyond 4 in this second bracket because we start at 0, and that 0 through 4 makes 5 of them. All right, we're now going to call a print method that prints this matrix, and this is one of our assignments, so let's go ahead and do it together. Now, I only initialized the top row of this matrix. The rest of this matrix is going to be full of zeros because those are the default values for int, but we'll come back to that. So we're going to scroll up, and some of these matrices, these methods actually return something. Oh, missing a static again. And so I have them return null or 0, just so that they compile, or else it wouldn't compile and we wouldn't be able to test our work. So we have a print for a string matrix, but we're going to do a print for an integer matrix. And what we want to do is we want to print them out row at a time. So I'm going to use this, what I call an RC loop, for int r equals 0. So I'm going to start at row 0, r less than mat.length. So the length of your matrix is the first number that goes in here. So we did a 4 and a 5. So this is actually going to be 4 because it's the length of that first number. Then I'll say I need to get the number of columns. So I have to take one of the rows, mat bracket 0. So I take that row and I get the length of it. And since our matrices in AP Computer Science will all be rectangular, you can just use the first row to get the length of the columns. But in reality, matrices do not have to have the same number of values in each row in computer science. So usually we say mat bracket R. Mat bracket R means that if the rows are have different number of columns based on what row you're in, it will continue to adjust. And I'm going to simply print out the value. And the first thing is your row number, and the second thing is your column number. And then I'll put a space after it. And I'm going to simply print. Now, after this inner for loop is completed, that means we've looped through the entire column. So that, if our matrix here, that means after that inner for loop, we start with row here at the first row, and then we move column 0, 1, 2. At that point, I'm now ready to move to a new line. So I'm going to do a blank line. I'll say system.out.print line. So I'm adding a new line at each one of those moments. Okay? All right, we've compiled it. Let's test our program. And we should see a bunch of zeros, except for the top row should be 53492. So we're going to run test. And you'll see that it makes that matrix there. Okay. Well, that's basically the introduction to the matrices. It's time to get playing with it. Um, we need to test each one of these methods with in different ways. So I will finish making this test method for you, and then I'll upload it. It's updated.